Good morning, Braywick Court School. What are we going to do today? We're going to learn, enjoy, succeed. Now, it's Thursday, the 11th of June, 2020, and it's me, Mrs. Nash, from Year 5, doing your assembly today. And what are we going to learn, enjoy, and succeed at today? So, I was thinking that actually, everyone at Braywick knows how much I love science, and I get very excited about science. So I thought it might be nice to do an assembly about science and conduct an experiment that whether you're at school or at home or in the park or in your garden, you could do yourselves. And it is super simple. Okay, so that's what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn something sciencey. Okay, what are we going to enjoy today? Well, we can enjoy this science experiment. We're going to enjoy going outside and collecting something for our experiment. And we're going to succeed at conducting our experiment and looking at our results. So, as every true scientist knows, you need to look the part. So here, I have my trusty goggles and my lab coat. That's better. Now I feel more sciencey. The experiment we're going to look at today is, or the question we're going to answer today in our science experiment is, do all daisies have the same number of petals? Do all daisies have the same number of petals? Let's investigate. So, here's what you need to do at home or at school. You need to find 2 daisies. Now, usually, I would say we never pick anything that's alive or out in the garden, like flowers. We don't pick them because they're living things. And actually, the moment you pick flowers, they start to die. Okay, so even if you put them in jars or vases of water, they do slowly die. So I like to leave things in their natural habitat for as long as possible. But daisies are in fact weeds. And as we're doing something educational, I think we can justify picking a couple of daisies. So, without further ado, I'm off to find some daisies. Okay, so let's take it back to my original question. So my science question of today, on the investigation we're going to do, is, do all daisies have the same number of petals? So there's 2 daisies here, can you see them? Now, some of you might want to make a prediction. Do you think all daisies have the same number of petals? If so, why? If you think they have different petals, why do you think that? What evidence could you use? What could you base your prediction on? Okay, so here's 2 daisies. What we're going to do is I'm going to use them and I'm going to really carefully pluck each of the white petals off them, and we're going to count. Do both of these daisies have the same number of petals? Okay, I'm back. I've been out and I've collected 2 daisies. Okay, and I've also got a piece of black card. What I'm going to do is very carefully, with each daisy, I'm just going to pluck, which means gently remove each of the white petals on my daisies. And I'm going to put them on this black card. Now, I'm putting my white petals on my black card, so it's super easy to see how many I've got when I'm counting them. Okay, to make sure I don't get my petals mixed up between my daisies, I am going to put daisy A on my one side and daisy B on the other side. Okay, I'm going to keep them separate, okay, while I'm counting the petals. Okay, so that's the next thing I'm going to do. Okay, so what I've done here is I have really super carefully plucked all of the white petals off of my daisy. And now I'm just left with the middle part of my daisy. Okay, and I've carefully put my petals there. Now, I'm going to do my second daisy. And just really, really super carefully pluck the petals on and put them on the side. Okay, as you can see here, I've got daisy A on the left and all the white petals on my black card, and daisy B on the right with all Daisy B's petals on the black card. And what I'm going to do now is very carefully count how many petals each daisy had. And I'm going to write them down on this piece of card. Mrs. Nash, why do you love science so much? Is something that lots of children at Brainwick ask me all the time. And I guess the reason is I just love the awe and wonder about it. I love the questions that get asked and then trying to think of ways how we can answer those questions and discover the answers. And if there's a practical way of doing it, like an experiment, I will always choose that option because that's my most favourite thing to do. Now, one of the key skills that scientists have is pattern seeking, so looking for patterns, which is why I decided to look at the question, do all daisies have the same number of petals? Because we can start to look for patterns. So, do daisies have the same number of petals? Well, I can tell you that Daisy A had 35 petals and Daisy B had 33 petals. So, already I know that two of my daisies that I chose from down at the Nature Reserve don't have the same number of petals. But one of the big things in science is something called fair testing. And that means when you carry out a test or an experiment, you have to try and make it as fair as possible. Now, I just went down to the dell, the little area where the pond and the bridge is, and chose two daisies. But this isn't what we would say is a fair test, because we can't guarantee that petals haven't been removed from this daisy before I picked it, okay? They could have been blown off in a gust of wind, they could have been trodden on or trampled on by people walking through the nature reserve, okay? So that's one thing you have to consider when with whatever science experiment you're doing, you have to try and make it fair. So how could I have made this test fairer? Well, there are probably a few ways. One of the first things that I'm thinking about is perhaps I could go back and choose 2 more daisies, or even 4 more daisies, or 100 daisies, and count the number of petals they've got, because that would make it fairer, because I've just chosen 2. And if you think about all the daisies that are out there, I could have chosen any 2, and perhaps if I did it again, I would choose more, and that's what would make it a bit fairer. For those of you that thought perhaps daisies would have the same number of petals, I wonder why you thought that. And actually, I asked a couple of my friends, and I told them I was doing this experiment, and I got them to predict whether they thought whether or not daisies would have the same number of petals. And quite a few of my friends did think that they would have the same number of petals. And when I asked them why, they said it was because daisies are all approximately the same size, and therefore they would probably have the same number of petals. And I thought that was a really good reason, actually, because if you think about it, when you see daisies in the grass or in fields, they are all very, very similar in size, okay? And even these 2 bits that I'm left with now, okay, are very, very similar in size, okay? So I thought that was actually a really good reason. So I've got Daisy A with 35 petals and Daisy B with 33 petals. We've decided that this wasn't a fair test because I only chose 2 daisies, and there are obviously millions of daisies. We've discussed about how I could make this a fair test by perhaps testing more daisies. However, I have noticed a pattern in the daisies that I've chosen. And it's only a really small pattern, but actually it's something that when I asked the children in Maple class particularly, what's the same and what's different? One of the things I would say that is the same about the number of petals on both of these daisies is they're both odd numbers. So I've got 35, and we know that 5 is an odd number, and I've got 33. We know that that's an odd number. So something I'd be interested in finding out further is, I don't think daisies do all have the same number of petals, but do all daisies have an odd number of petals? Now that's perhaps something that you could look into, and you could send me your results, and I would love to see them. So if you would like to go and pick some daisies, and you can either do that in your garden, or if you don't have a garden, when you go out for your daily exercise, I'm sure there'll be plenty of daisies around. Perhaps you could pick some daisies and find out how many petals they've got, okay? And send me, you could put your results in a lovely table, or you could just write them down, and then you could send them to me. And as part of our Braywick science investigation, perhaps we could look at the question, do all daisies have an odd number of petals? Okay, Braywick Court, thank you so much for listening to my assembly, and I hope you're as enthused about science and asking questions as I am. So each week I'm going to do an assembly that is based on science, but I'm going to make sure that the experiment that I do in school or whether I'm at home is something that you too can copy. And don't forget to send me your daisy results. I'd love to see those. And I thought it'd be really nice to finish assembly with a poem called The Daisy. I'm a pretty little thing, always coming with spring. In the meadows, green I'm found, peeping just above the ground. And my stalk is covered flat with a white and yellow hat. Little children, when you pass, lightly over the tender grass, skip about, but do not tread on my meek and lowly head. For I'm always here to say, surely winter's gone away. Okay, Braywick, thank you very much for listening.